Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Crista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, the Crista and Annie show is back, a really great way to round out the year. And the irony is, we came on today to talk about predictions and trends for 2024, and we ended up having such a intense chat before we hit record that we totally changed the direction of the episode. So don't worry, that episode is coming. But today, what we want to talk to you about is Pareto. We want to talk to you about the 80-20 rule. We want to talk to you about what is basically really similar to leaning out. But we want to talk to you about the risk associated with it and the practical way to approach it. Because there's a lot of books that have come out recently. You probably know the one that we're referencing that everyone is talking about. This principle comes up and gets brought up over and over and over again. And I love it. I mean, I literally live by the Pareto principle. I absolutely love it. But there is a really practical application piece that people miss a lot. And if they miss it, it puts their business at risk. It puts their brand at risk. It impacts them not only in the short term, but in the long-term sustainability of their business. And so I think we want to break down and really talk about, probably pretty passionately, if it's anything like the way we were talking before we hit the record button here, how to practically look at getting clear on what matters most in your business and cutting all of the things that don't on paper. So, Annie, I'm going to turn it over to you to share some of your initial thoughts on this, and let's dive in.
I'm so glad that we've kind of gone on this wonderful tangent and taken the listeners along with us, because lately, what I feel in an unexpected way, because I also love the principle and try to live by the principle. And it's something that you have worked on in my business too. It's something that I know I need to work hard to do, which is lean out. And you and I have had many conversations on and off the microphone about the essentials of that. But what's been coming up for me lately, when I'm hearing people kind of misuse or misunderstand 80-20, is just straight up fear for our entrepreneurial brethren who are not yet comfortably earning what they should. What I'm seeing people excited to do is throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, well, this didn't work for 2 weeks and I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm going to assume that this task I don't like is the 80% and I'm going to throw money at delegating it or killing it before it's time, right? So I see people that really have no business doing this, hiring a VA to do their sales calls for them because they're like, well, that's the 80%. I hate my sales calls. I don't want to do them. And it's like, okay, well, hold on. You're not only putting someone unqualified, you're putting someone who's not you in the seat of all that sexy, juicy research and development. You are kneecapping yourself when it comes to getting out and meeting your ideal client. When you're networking, when you're building brand visibility, you can't just delegate that stuff right away. Another thing you can't just delegate right away is getting your processes in a row. Yes, you can hire help for those things. But I see a lot of people listening to 80-20 and being like, okay, here's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to throw all of my ducks on the product I think is the most fun. I'm going to hire a massive team. And I'm going to build this huge structure, and I'm going to focus everything on scaling to 7 figures when I haven't yet hit 6, right? And it's like, I want to make sure that we're very, very clear. And I can't wait to ask you this, Crista. Like, when are the times when we most need the principle? And when are the times when the principle is misused and a distraction? You know, what do you think about that, Crista?
Yeah. So for those of you watching this interview, you will be able to see my hand movements. For those of you who are listening, imagine an hourglass that's wide on the top, pinched in the middle, and then goes wide again on the bottom. Annie's seen me do this a lot. We do this with people at the retreat all the time. But anything that you do in business, no matter what you're doing, right? Whether it's a new business, whether it's a new offer, whether it's a new idea, anytime you're doing anything new at all, regardless of how many years you have been in business, everything goes through that basic shape where at the top, it's wide. You're trying all sorts of different things. You don't know yet what is going to work. Over time, you're narrowing and narrowing and narrowing until you get to the point where you're like, this is it. This is what's working. This is what I want to scale. This is what I want to go all in on, at which point in time it flips. Now you're trying to take that very narrow, very focused thing, and you're trying to amplify the heck out of it. You're trying to really scale it out. And so you start naturally kind of broad. You start trying all of the things or experimenting and trying these different ideas or these different approaches to see what lands best, what messaging works best, what sales techniques work best, what, lead gen works best, what works to actually communicate the value of what I do. And then once somebody says yes, what works to be able to best deliver on that value and get them to the promised solution as quickly and as, kind of predictably as possible, right? And the reality is, no matter how many years in business you've been, you don't always know exactly what that's going to be. You have to go through the period of experimentation and narrowing, leaning out. You do all the things so that you can get clear on what the one or two things are you want to go all in on, and then flip your triangle. Instead of going wide to the point in the middle, you're then flipping it upside down and going from the point in the middle wide again, where you're trying to amplify and you're trying to scale. And so to me, that's where 80/20 comes in. And you need to give things the cycles and the experimentation to figure out what works. The midpoint, the pinch point is your 20%. That's what you then want to go ahead and amplify, but you can't jump straight from the widest part of that funnel and straight from the widest part and go immediately down to the 20%. You need to give things their cycles, and things do not always work really well in the beginning because in your head, it sounds great. Your team loves you. And so they're telling you, yeah, this is going to be amazing, right? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But even if it's the best thing ever, we can't always predict what's going on with the market, how people's buying patterns are shifting, all of the things that we've seen this year and that we've been seeing historically, right? You don't have control over those things. You can do your best to try to influence an outcome, but at the end of the day, the buyer's going to buy when they want to buy. And you have to be able to and invest in the time and the activities to get clear on what is working specifically for you, for your offer, for your market at this time. And that to me is where 80/20 comes in. If you try to jump too quickly to 20, you actually start to scale something that was never actually working in the first place. You have to get really clear on what's working. You have to do the cycles and the experimentation, and then you scale it. I see people scale way too early because there's all this pressure, or they don't understand what scale means and they confuse it with growth. And because people aren't really clear on or feel super pressured to scale from day one, they end up scaling the wrong things, and they scale noise, they scale complexity, and they can't understand why things aren't working and why no matter how hard they work, they just don't seem to get significantly different results.
Yeah, and I'm all for changing stuff up. And I'm not blaming everybody for the over hiring or overspending. I did that for years, right? My business could have been much more profitable much earlier if I stopped hiring team members and investing in stuff I really couldn't afford. But again, the pressure, the keeping up with the Joneses, the idea that, well, you have to delegate. You can't possibly grow if you're not spending every waking moment in your zone of genius. Listen, y'all, there are going to be foundational times where you cannot spend every waking moment in your zone of genius. Crista, you said it so perfectly. You said you got to do this over time, right? And we see this play out all the time. Things take time. And if we expect everything to happen instantaneously, we're not doing any better than the people that read the 4-Hour Work Week and really think that Tim Ferriss is saying you can only work 4 hours for the rest of your life. That's not what the book is about. The book is about essentialism, but it's essentialism based on data.
Right. And I think that there's so much value in what you just said there. But if there's one word that I break success down to, it's intentionality. Like just be intentional with what you're doing. And you want to directionally know. And so even if you don't have a 10-year vision, or you don't see where your business is going to be 30 years from now, or whatever place you're at, as long as you know what the next level of success looks like, that's really the most important thing. Is you have to kind of directionally know what you're going to know if the decisions and the things you're focused on in the now are going to take you there. Otherwise, you're just kind of going along and you never really quite get where you want to go, because you kind of need to know where you want to go to make the right decisions today. But it doesn't mean, because I know some people do, like I live in vision. I could tell you exactly what things are going to look like 10 years from now. And I see it so visually. It makes my husband a little crazy because he does not see these things. But like, to me, it's already happened. The movie plays in my head and I can see it so clearly and so vividly. It's literally like a movie. And I know a lot of people don't see that. Some people are like, I can like maybe see next week, but it's like, I think you do need to look at like, what's the next level? And maybe the next level for you is only a year from now. Maybe you can look and say, you know what? I don't know what the next 10 years looks like. And that's cool. But I know that by the time I get to the end of 2024, these are some really critical things that I think I want to see in place in order to take things where I want to go longer term, or I just want to kind of land the year on. And those sorts of things I think are really important. Otherwise, you run a very high risk that you will be spending your time on 80% instead of 20%, because it's easy to get caught up in the distractions. It's easy to see all the cool new tools and the technologies and the things that you should be doing. And like, you need AI to be running your world, right? And so it's easy to get like caught up and hear these things and be like, well, wait a minute, am I using AI enough? Should I hire a person, or should I figure out how to teach AI to do it? And it's like, there's all these things that can be really easy to reactionarily fall into, and you don't actually move the needle in your business long term. And so I think you do need some level of vision. I am a big believer in vision, but I also recognize that not everybody can see so far out, and that's okay. But at least get clear on what 2024 success looks like for you, so you can make decisions that you feel like are either in the 20% or are taking you towards the 20%.
Heck yeah. And along the way, by all means, monitor how skilled you think you are at something. Monitor whether something drains you or feeds you. Monitor areas where your learning curve has kind of come to a natural end and you still don't feel completely proficient, right? Like, those are important. Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying ignore every single thing happening all around you all the time and just keep working. Absolutely not. But we need that data. We need that rich data, and we need to pay our dues as well. So I love the idea of doing things with intention, and I love the idea of knowing where we're going, right? But it's kind of like that show, Undercover Boss, where they take the CEO of a mega gajillionaire company and they make him go work in the warehouse. And most of these people are so removed, even if that's where they came up through, they're so removed from it now. They forgot what it's like to be on the floor, and they get these huge insights from going back to the beginning. And what I want to say to y'all is, if you're still the warehouse, if you are still your warehouse, don't kneecap yourself by removing this critical data. You need the data of this level. You need the experience of this level. You need the hard knocks of this level to some degree in order to make better choices in the future, in order to hire better in the future, in order to delegate better in the future, in order to plan better in the future.
Yeah, the one thing I want to talk about too is the kind of seasons and cycles of business. And this actually doesn't have anything to do with number of years in business. To me, this is the newness of what you're doing. It's not the years in duration. It's the kind of newness. If you have something that you have been doing and delivering repeatedly for years over years over years, you've got solid systems in place. You've got a solid team in place who knows how to deliver it, who knows how to sell it, who knows how to do all the things. You are in a season where you are probably focused much more on what I call the influence stage of business, which is where you're more the thought leader. Maybe you're writing books. Maybe you're really focusing on relationship management. Maybe you're networking and getting yourself more visible and into the right places and in front of the right people. Your focus in the business shifts pretty dramatically, and you are likely spending your time in your 20% in your zone of genius. And that's amazing. And I think so often we look at businesses like that and think, okay, that's what I should be doing because that's what they're doing. But they're in a season where they have done the work to put the systems in place, to put the team in place, to build up an experiment and figure out what goes through that pinch point. What are all the things that they had to try and pull out in order to get clear on that 20%. And I guarantee you, they have a really solid ecosystem and a really well-run engine behind that core offer or behind what they do that makes that possible. Where I think people go wrong is they're like, well, I want to just spend all my time in my zone of genius. So I'm just going to do the things that I love. I'm not going to do anything I don't love to do. Just going to do what I love. That's it. Cool. Well, what about all the other critical foundations in your business? Like you might not love systems, you might not love planning. I know that kind of breaks my brain a little bit because I love them so much, but I get that most entrepreneurs don't love these things, but it does not mean that you can effectively scale a business without them. And so you do need to understand the season and the place that you're in and what those kind of key things are that enable that to be possible. And I see people make a couple different mistakes. They skip the 80% to only focus on the 20%, not recognizing that they can never have success with the 20% without having the 80% in place first. And this isn't saying waste your time on things that are unnecessary, but my point in this is you don't always know what is necessary until you try it, until you do it. Or you partner with someone like me or Annie who has done it 1,000 times and can help you fast track it. But there is no way you get around doing the cycles, and you cannot go from 0 to 20% and stay there. You have to learn and experiment and see what works. Like, I think that's one piece that's really, really critical. So know your cycle, know what's needed. But then the other thing that I see, the other mistake that I see is in the quest to spend our own time in our own zone of genius and on our own 20%. Sometimes we do not work smarter. We actually just take the things that we were doing that were in our 80% and delegate them to some other people to do when they never should be done at all. And instead, you're just like, I'm getting this off my plate. Hello, you go do it. But then nobody is holistically looking at it. So nobody is doing the experimentation. Nobody's doing the monitoring. Nobody's getting clear on, is this actually giving us the results? What do we want to try next to see if we get better results? When can we realistically cut this thing? And so you're paying for team members to just do a whole bunch of stuff that isn't needed. And your team's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as you shared earlier, Annie. And you have this expense that's growing, but you're not necessarily seeing the profits coming back in the business as a result. And it's because the eye's off the ball. You're so focused on your 20% that you're like, I'm just going to have everybody else do everything else. But nobody's strategically looking at, but do you have the right puzzle pieces all coming together to paint the picture that you're trying to paint in your business? And I think those are some of the other risks that I see. What about you?
And are we all rowing in the same direction? Right? Like I come in on a marketing advisory role and a lot of the time, and a lot of my clients have a writer, ads person, a social media manager or 7, and all of that stuff is great. And also I've been all of those things. So I'm not dogging those professions at all. Right. But if we don't have cohesion and a plan between our social media people and our ads people and our lead magnet people and our writers and our web people, we're building a hodgepodge mess instead of a cohesive picture, right? And so I think a lot of the time, I think you're so right that we need to either be our own supervisor of these teams, or we need to not be delegating these things because they don't need to be done, or we need to have a monthly team meeting and bring everybody together and say, hey, let's make sure we're all going east. Okay, the goal is east. Half y'all rowing west. We're going east, right? And I think that's really critically important so that we don't slow ourselves down unintentionally by getting too bloated or too distracted or too shiny.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially in our marketing efforts, because it's so easy to overmarket. And overmarketing is not going to carry you across a negotiation threshold. It's not going to carry you across a sales threshold. It's not going to carry you across a mindset threshold. It's not going to carry you across a debt threshold, right? It's not, there are problems that marketing can't fix. So, not that you shouldn't be doing it, but let's just make sure, is my outbound matching my inbound? Are all my team members pulling in the same direction? Or if you're Annie Passanisi Ruggles, note to self, do your funnels have bottoms? Because what I do is I get really excited about the new, right? And so I kind of roller coaster tycoon and I build these plans or toilet bowls that go to pretty much nowhere, right? So it's kind of like when you're playing roller coaster tycoon and you don't finish the track, you basically just kill everybody on it. You put them in their little thing and they careen off the edge and die. Whoops, right? Like, does your plan have its foundation and walls? Does your funnel have a bottom? Does your nurture sequence end in a buy button, right? All of these things are the things we really need to check, because we get pushed into more, faster, spin. And what happens is we kind of become a tornado, leaving all this half finished stuff in our wake. At least I do.
Yeah. And I think there's, again, a lot of value in what you said there. But the main thing that I kind of took out of that is, to me, the 80-20, when I think about the 20%, the 20% in a lot of ways is about optimization. It's about how can you take the things that you have and how can you do them better? How can you fully finish them? How can you make sure your funnel is complete and leading people in the direction that you want? How can you make sure that your team is all going in the right direction? How do you make sure that you are clearly setting the strategy and aligning the right people to come together to deliver on that? Like, how are you doing that? To me is the 20%. The 20% isn't about new, shiny, sexy stuff. Like, that's cool. Usually when you're doing the new, shiny, sexy stuff, as I said earlier, you're at the top where you're trying all the things. You are very much at the 80 to 100%. Then I don't care if you've been in business for 30 years, anytime you're doing something new, you're there, right? It's when you're getting further and further down, you're getting closer and closer to that 20. That's where you're cutting out everything that doesn't matter, everything that's not working. And you are going all in, you are optimizing, you are finishing, you are making sure that the things that you are doing are producing the results that you want. And that, to me, I think is just so incredibly valuable. And the very last thing that I want to talk about on this before we wrap up this topic is, in the quest to the 20%, one of the things that I see people do often, and I've talked about this on prior episodes as well. I shared an example with one of my clients who had wanted to shift up how she works. Annie knows this because she works with the client with me. And this client had worked with another coach as well. It was both. Yeah, you know the story. I know. Annie's like, oh, I know where she's going with this.
Oh, hold on. Let me climb the wall because, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And this person wanted to shift how they were working, as they should have. They wanted to take Fridays off. They wanted more protected space in the mornings in their schedule, right? And we've done all of that together. She has dramatically shifted how she works. She has built up an incredible team and systems around her. Part of that team is me and Annie, right? And so there's so much that worked really well. But the thing that the other coach did that I really disagreed with and that I see really often is she wanted her to approach the shift in her schedule like a Band-Aid. It was like, poof, you no longer work Fridays as of today. Poof, you no longer work mornings other than strategy on your business as of today. And it was like this instant get to what you want without giving any consideration to the fact that there is where you are today. There is where you want to be at this point in the future, and you have to build a bridge between the two. You must, unless you want to really upset your clients, unless you want to go back on the commitments that you made, unless you want to negatively impact your brand, unless you want to be completely stressed out dealing with unhappy people, right? You can't just magically poof, snap your fingers and get to that place that you want to be. And I see this really often. And I see this message sometimes said really directly, other times implied, that you shouldn't be spending any time on anything but the 20%. So if you are, you must cut it immediately. And I mean, my business is literally the lean out method. I am helping you lean out to your 20% at all points in time. So I believe full-heartedly that you should not be spending time on anything that's not adding value to your clients' profit, to your business. You should be lean, right? Totally get that. But I also think that we need to be really practical about how you get there. It is not a Band-Aid, rip it off, poof, in this moment, you no longer are doing those things. You have to realistically look at, here's where I want to go. Here's where I am today. How can I get there in a way that's really strategic, really intentional? There's that word again. And how can I do it in a way that is going to be good for both me and for my clients, my team, people that I've already made commitments to, in a way to do this. And whether that means you're cutting a program, whether that means you're changing your schedule, whatever it means in your business, I think you do need to look at, what is that 80% that you're trying to cut or you're trying to change? Cool. Great that you've recognized that it's not serving where you want to go next. Absolutely commit to making those changes, but figure out how to get there in a way that sets you up for long-term success as much as short-term success. Because a lot of times people wait. They wait for things to get so bad or to be so overwhelmed, or they reactively are like, that's it. You know what? I'm not doing anything outside my zone of genius. And it becomes this reactionary thing. And you end up really, really, really damaging your brand and your long-term success and results.
Don't do it. Please.
Annie's
Please
just shaking her head.
I mean, it's horrifying. It's terrifying to watch. It's like watching somebody deep dive into a pool with no water in it. Mm-hmm. And I know, especially from empathy, because I've done that. Right? Like, I've ripped a Band-Aid that was holding my leg on. Don't do that. Please, please don't. Take your time. Be deliberate. Be intentional. Play it smart. Please. Please, please don't just fire all your clients. And this is also why I don't make major business decisions when I'm sleepy, hungry, high, or on a live stream with other people. Right? It truly, I mean, I don't drink, or I would put that on the list as well. Right. But there are so many times when you can get caught up in the narrative of things and are like, yes, I'm going to take the leap. Have you eaten a sandwich today, darling? Have you taken a nap? Are you a little stoned? It's okay. No judgment, but maybe wait till you're not. And the same thing goes for me if I'm in like a conference or on a live stream and there's people all around me and they're all like, rah, 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 let's burn it down. I can get that like mob mentality of like, yeah, let me get my pitchfork. Wait, wait, slow down. Am I making the decision that is right for me? Am I making the responsible long-term decision, not the hyped decision? And then I get to do the real fun, joyful work of finding the joy in the mundane and finding the joy in the patience and setting the vision that keeps me motivated, on task, intentional, and not just watching people free fall out of the sky because a book said to.
Yeah, I know. I sent an email a little while ago telling people, whatever you do, don't just like make big dramatic business changes. Don't kill your core offer and introduce something brand new and expect that your sales are going to be perfect. Like, you need a strategy, you need a plan, you need to really think through, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? And I got back so many responses from people saying, everyone needs to hear this message. I did exactly that because I was told to do it, and my business still hasn't recovered. And so often it is easy, just like the examples that you gave, to fall into the hype of it. Well, this book said it and everyone's talking about it, and so I'm just going to do it. Or you leave the rah-rah event or the conversation and you feel so empowered and so amazing, and all these other people made these changes and I'm going to do it too. And you absolutely should do it. but do not Band-Aid it. Don't rip the Band-Aid off and do it instantly. Be deliberate, be intentional, really strategically think through what is the right decision and how do I get from where I am to where I want to be in the most simple, streamlined, and supportive way possible for myself, for my team, and for my clients and community. I think that right there is the magic and the key in all of this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave you with a tool that I know I talk about all the time. So if you're a regular listener of the show, you're probably saying, is she really going to tell us about Chuck again? Yes, I am.
Oh, Chuck is the best, though. Tell him about Chuck, Crista.
All right. Chuck is literally, I think, one of the best things that I have ever created in my lifetime. And I've created some pretty awesome stuff.
She has. She very much has.
But Chuck will help you get clear on the 20% that is driving the 80% of your results. Chuck stands for cut, hold, change, keep. It is there. I have an entire podcast episode on it. So check the show notes below for the link to that episode. I walk you through exactly how to do it. But the point with Chuck, I recommend you do Chuck every 30 days. At a minimum, it should be a part of your quarterly planning. But I really think that you want to really objectively look at the things that you're doing, the activities that you and your team are doing, the offers that you have, all pieces of your offer in your funnel, including your freebies, right? Look at everything that you're doing in your business and you want to assess, is this really working? Is this something that we should cut? Is this something that maybe is important long-term, but does not need to be a focus for us right now? We could reallocate this time to something more valuable, put it on hold. Is it something that is working brilliantly and we want to keep doing it? Keep it. Is it something that we know has a ton of potential, could be working better, but it's not really giving us the results that we want, or it's taking us more time and effort than we want? Then that's where you want to change it. And all of these things that we're talking about, they're probably going to fall in your cut or change category. Maybe even hold, right? We're not really talking about the keeps here. We're talking about your 20% is frequently going to need to go through a cut, a hold, or a change in order to get to the next state that you want to be in. And so there's 4 questions to consider to really get clear on which category something rolls into. So go check out that other episode and listen to it. But Chuck is a really simple, really practical way to get clear on what matters right now in your business and what the 20% is that you do want to be focused on. And just remember, if something does need to be cut, amazing, but look at how and when can you cut it in a way that's supportive as opposed to destructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Annie, thank you for coming back again for our bonus session that we were not planning on recording at all today, but this is what happens when the two of us gets together. So I hope you really enjoyed this conversation, and stay tuned. We really will talk about 2024 predictions coming up soon. Thanks so much. We'll see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.